Hello, and welcome to Beyond the Limb, where we explore physical therapy evidence, expertise, and innovation in limb loss and limb difference care. I'm your host, Will Riddick, and I'm a physical therapist focused on improving care for patients with limb loss and limb difference. In this episode, we're diving into the topic of recreation in adaptive sports. People living with limb loss or limb difference often lose more than their limb during their journey. They might miss out on opportunities to participate in the things that they enjoy. And while one might immediately think of high-level sports like running, these can be simple things such as going to a local restaurant, golfing, or going fishing. These activities bring about a sense of identity, belonging in a community, and so much more. For rehabilitation professionals, it is key to reintroduce these things and find ways to engage patients beyond the activities of daily living. To unpack this topic, we're joined by two distinguished leaders in limb loss rehabilitation and adaptive sports. Jonathan Glasberg serves as the clinical coordinator for the New York, New Jersey VA in prosthetics, where he advances clinical practice across multiple facilities. With more than 2 decades of experience, he specializes in prosthetics, gait training, and rehabilitation for individuals with limb loss. He's also an adjunct faculty member at NYU and Touro University and directs several adaptive sports programs for veterans in the tri-state area, including Heroes on the Hudson and Pedals of Honor. We're also joined by Leif, a national leader in rehabilitation, adaptive sports, and amputation care, whose work spans advanced assistive technologies and federal health systems. As director of the VA's National Veteran Sports Programs and Special Events, he oversees nationwide initiatives linking adaptive sports, community recreation, and rehabilitation. His prior roles include leadership within the Extremity Trauma and Amputation Center of Excellence and shaping clinical strategy for limb trauma and amputation care across the VA. He also chairs a federal interagency task force on outdoor recreation for veterans and serves as faculty at Shenandoah University. Guys, thanks for being here.
Hey, Will, good to see you.
All right, let's just go ahead and kind of dive in here. Could each of you kind of tell me a little bit about like your background? How did you kind of first get into, I would say, kind of working with the limb loss population in general, and kind of how that sort of led into your current role? Leif, let me have you start.
Yeah, sure. Happy to jump in. I tell you, Will, for me, it's a path I would recommend for anybody. In that, my first job right out of school was at Bellevue Hospital. So this is a public hospital. It's also a trauma center. I think if you can get either one of those or both of those together, great way to start your career. I mean, when I was working there, I would have patients with transfemoral limb loss. I would have patients with hip disarticulations. I had patient with forelimb amputations. And so, like, thinking of these levels, I even had a patient who had a limb or a hand replantation. And I mean, like, so these are things that I didn't even know at that time, right? Coming out of school were so rare. And so, I mean, I got exposed to a lot right out of the gates. And after that, I joined the VA.
Awesome. Jonathan.
Yeah, for me, I started at the VA hospital as I had an actual scholarship to work for the VA. So sorry for the younger therapists out there. Yeah, it may not be quite a thing right now. But starting out there, again, not to date myself, but guess what? I used to prescribe a bunch of canes for veterans. And the canes back then were wooden. And so what do you do to get them to the correct size? Well, you go up when you're in the VA, you go up to the prosthetics department and say, hey, kind sirs, could you please cut this to whatever length you want? Well, I went there so much and they said, hey, you seem handy with tools. Why don't you just use the bandsaw yourself? So I started getting very comfortable with all the prosthetists that were there. And I found it to be the most inviting and most interesting place in the hospital. So I did work in many areas of our medical center, but I loved prosthetics, and that actually got me more interested and eventually into my life as working with people with limb loss.
Got it. Really interesting ways of kind of getting into this. Very different between the two of you too. How did kind of both of you have this like really in-depth kind of roles in terms of adaptive sports? Leif, how did that kind of come about?
I mean, you just got to do it, right? I was working. Jonathan actually hired me at the VA, and so I got into amputation rehab first. That was kind of my gateway into adaptive sports. And as I got more training and started working regionally for New York, New Jersey, just beyond the Manhattan VA, my expertise grew, and so in that, I found out about these adaptive sports programs that were happening in the community, as well as in VA. And so, the New York City Marathon, Achilles. They were the Achilles Track Club back then. Now it's Achilles International. They do a hand cycle tune up before the marathon. So I, volunteered for that. Went out to Colorado, worked for the VA, worked the Winter Sports Clinic, San Diego for the Summer Sports Clinic, and so I was like the amputation rehab specialist on this team of clinical providers. And so, that was the kind of the first exposure, and then it was figuring out different ways that that a physical therapist or really myself could fit into that. And that was kind of a new type of work that Jonathan and I were doing, right? Like when we first met, we're doing kind of more traditional physical therapy. And then we kind of brought all of that care outside of the hospital, right? So we work in a brick and mortar hospital just like anybody at those times, and really got out of the clinics and out into the community.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Jonathan.
Leaf got out there a bunch, and every time he went to a different event, he brought back more and more knowledge, and didn't keep it to himself. Applied it, and it really helped. Leaf created some amazing events for us in the New York City area, and we just nonstop expanded upon those.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of a story. I hear this a lot, and just colleagues that kind of work in this area of practice. That much of things like in prosthetics, it's just kind of like getting slowly exposed to it and learning a little bit here and there. And as you kind of build up working with folks, kind of exploring things, you kind of develop this passion or develop these expertise that kind of translates into these later skills that you develop, or in your cases the programs that y'all have developed too. um Leaf, if you don't mind, kind of tell me a little bit about sort of the National Veteran Sports Program, special events, what you do with that, and kind of what that program does.
Yeah, we have 6 week long programs, and really what it is turning. What we really aim to do is turn, or what I was aiming to do with all of that was turn adaptive sports and fun and games into adaptive sports medicine, right? And so really make it a clinical practice specialty. And to do that, it spans many disciplines. So it's not just physical therapists, right? It's of course recreation therapists, occupational therapists. We have physicians on our teams as well as rehab nurses, and then it's like those are the clinical folks, but then you need the people that are the experts in the sports. And so within this program office, and like that's kind of the core structure to use this, as well as we use therapeutic arts as well. We have the largest creative arts program for veterans in the country, and so with these kind of different modalities, they seem so different, but they're really doing a lot of the same things. Was to bring veterans together, bring providers together, and really do a deep dive, immersive event. And so they're week long programs: the National Veterans Wheelchair Games, the National Veterans Summer Sports Clinic, the National Veterans Creative Arts Festival, and we also have a grant program where we're given 15-16 million dollars to community groups to provide adaptive sports for veterans. And one of the cool niches is we're able to support most of what we do. And so, I mean, everything I described so far is rehabilitation. We're doing sports, but it's part of that rehab journey or rehab continuum. The one thing we do that's really, 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 really beyond that is a training stipend program where we're able to support elite athletes with disabilities to compete at those highest levels. These are folks that are on national teams, competing in the Paralympics. And regardless of their level, whether they're emerging or whether they're there and they've reached that, it's really hard to be an elite athlete. Now imagine how hard it is to be an elite athlete when you're living with a disability. And so this stipend helps them really chase their dreams. And there's been some incredible outcomes because of it.
Yeah, that's super great. Just kind of curious, how do people get connected in terms of like within this, like within like the VA system? Is it like a therapist or like a physician might kind of refer them out to that? How do they get connected to you?
Yeah, it's happening through their rehab clinics, right? If you some sites we have these amazing recreation therapy units, and so those folks are incredible. It may be through their whole health program. It may be through voluntary services. There's different pathways. I know for folks like Jonathan and I that have a background in physical therapy. I mean, we're recruiting them out of the prosthetics clinics, right? So we'll go up to the prosthetics floor, and when the prosthetists are seeing the patients, we're going to work with them on the spot, and then we're also going to tell them what else there is that they can do to help themselves, right? And adaptive sports is a great fit for that.
Yeah, but to that note, an unfortunate barrier to participation in adaptive sports is getting knowledge of what's available. So it is hard to disseminate that. And yeah, we've done our part. Leif used to make these amazing billboards to put in the lobby for the smallest of events, and I still have them in my office as they were well done. But yeah, how to get it out there? What media do people use? Do they use any kind of media that isn't in print form? So yeah, it actually is an established barrier to participation. So trying to navigate that is an important thing to get it to the people.
Yeah. I kind of want to step back a little bit and sort of just kind of talk about the idea of like kind of recreation participation, adaptive sports in general. Jonathan, I want to kind of throw this question towards you. Having worked in this and having patients that have kind of gone through this, how would you say that like participating in these sort of programs, like how are they just like a really strong part of long-term rehabilitation for people?
There are established gains to be had from participating. One that I love to focus on is something called the athletic identity. And I can give you an example of this. Now, again, I know, Will, you don't work predominantly in a Veterans Affairs situation, but you could probably relate to this. So, yeah, you have a veteran who's living with limb loss, maybe some other comorbidities, and you ask, who are you? The first answer you're likely to hear is, I'm a disabled veteran. Okay, understood, understood. And there's a reason for having that identity. After people participate for a prolonged time, it doesn't have to be the longest time, but they continually participate in adaptive sports, they have something called a change in athletic identity. They have a different self-perceived identity. I have an example. A guy I worked with, bilateral lower limb loss from Vietnam. Knew him as a patient of prosthetics. He, self-described loner. Probably wasn't living the most healthy lifestyle. A little bit heavy and maybe even a little ornery. I don't know how you so who this is reaching, but that might be the way I'll say ornery. Uh, but he came to an event which actually Dr. Nelson started called Pedals of Honor, and I took the mantle for that. He got introduced to hand cycling, realized this is something he can do, and joined Achilles International, their freedom team. So this is going on for some time. I get a package into prosthetics for him. It's a couple of liners. I'm like, okay, I'm going to call this fellow up. Hey, taking a while from to answer the phone, but he ends up picking up a little out of breath. I said, this is strange. And I said, sir, where are you? And he's like, oh, sorry, Jonathan. I'm under the Brooklyn Bridge. I'm riding around Manhattan on my bike with some friends. Can I come in later for that stuff? I'm like, of course, sir. And I, brought a tear to my eye. But if you ask that guy today, now that he's getting closer to 80, you say, who are you? He's going to say, I'm a hand cyclist. He's not going to say, I'm a disabled veteran. So that's one of the main takeaways I see from our involvement in adaptive sports.
That is amazing. That's a great, a great story and a great example of that. Yeah, it's interesting as you think about that. I every once in a while have that kind of conversation of like identity with folks, and I would almost say it's like I think a lot of people they may not necessarily verbalize this directly, but I feel like they have a hard time putting a name to like who they are. Um, Yeah. So to hear like kind of that story of like being able to like identify through like being able to bring them back into activity, it's just like, it's like, oh, I'm a golfer, I'm a hand cyclist, I'm a hunter, things like this, just being able to
I'm a handsome
bring
devil,
it down to
you know. Strike that.
no, let's keep it. I'm keeping that one. All right. Okay. So I want to kind of talk about, let's say you're working with a patient and let's say, they are struggling with this idea of identity or, you know, uh, this idea, can they actually participate in some of these sports? For like your average person might be working with, and this is a question for either of y'all, what would be some barriers that you might come across with people, whether that's kind of like more like technical barriers or kind of just even like personal barriers within a patient?
Yeah, I mean, we did a systematic review on this a couple years ago, and beyond the research science, the common sense from our both of our experience, which would show that there are barriers, and it's the transportation, it's accessible facilities, whether it be a parking lot, a bathroom. I mean, when you think of when you're taking things outside, right? Is it an outhouse? Is there a wheelchair accessible outhouse, right? Or for something, right? And so it's that is the venue, the sport venue, is that accessible? And then there's fears, right? There's fear like I'm going to get hurt, like I can't do this, or it's not for me. Like I mean, last time I rode a bike, oh my gosh. And so I mean, those are the barriers, and then cost and things like that as well. And I mean, the flip side of this, Will, though, is we have the ability to remove those barriers. And when you do that, that's where the outcomes come, right? And so if you can coordinate and provide accessible transportation, if you can seek out those venues in advance so when you show up, they're going to work. It's going to work. And then, ultimately, it's always going to come back if you work in a team. So if you have really good sport instructors, or even better adaptive sport instructors to work with the clinical folks, it's you can eliminate those barriers. I mean, Jonathan, do you see anything else?
Yeah, well, you start hitting on the members of the team. And who are the members of the team? I feel like one is coming behind me. Oh, she's crawling. Okay. Sorry, that was the. I felt a team member coming, and it came by. She's quick. But who are the members of the team? Right? You have us, physical therapists. We're not putting us in the center. No, who's in the center? It's actually the person, right? The athlete is in the center. But then the spokes around there. Actually, Leif learned this at the national events, and we translated it to our local events. Is to have that seven-tiered system where you have admin folks, you have coaches, you have medical, you have your physical therapy staff, you have your sports-specific staff, you have your logistics people, and all these people together come to serve in the center who that athlete is and to promote their participation.
Yeah. And I mean that creates a safe environment, an environment folks can thrive in. And I mean that's the recipe right there.
Yeah. Kind of like lifting them up, kind of surrounding them and bringing them up to that next level.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's say if we're kind of like bringing a patient kind of first into activities, what kind of like entry level activities or sports might be something that you all might turn to, right? Maybe somebody who hasn't been kind of in that sport arena, maybe necessarily. Would you say that there's things that you tend to recommend to folks?
I think one of our entry go-tos is cycling, because it really can be adaptable for your level. There are so many different types of cycles, be they foot powered or hand powered. And if you have someone, say, who wants to be very recreational and maybe get around the block, there are ones that aren't all that efficient but can be quite fun. You could feel some wind going through your hair. Well, whatever. That's a self deprecation there. But there are ways to get out there and enjoy, even if you're not going for speed. And then, as I think Dr. Nelson can go in further, then you could take that recreational user and either with different equipment or adapting the equipment they have it go with them on their next part of their journey.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Jonathan completely. I would say where I started, right, like early in my career, the mistake I made was I thought everybody needed to run, right? I thought everybody needed to run on a running foot. Those feet are the coolest. I mean, there's no arguing, right? And so you got this blade, and it's like, I got to get somebody on this to run. And we found that not everybody actually wants to run, right? Like, you need to run to, right? We teach everybody to run to the bus, to run to get away from that dog, to whatever you get, those, that kind of running. But to like run for fitness isn't for everybody. And we have plenty of patients that do that, but things like kayaking, like, where it's an upper body sport, is great for people with lower limb impairment, whether it be spinal cord injury or limb loss, right? And so something like kayaking is great. I mean, and when you get into the adaptive sports world and you provide opportunities, it gives your patients an opportunity to connect with the sport, right? Like, you don't need not everybody was an athlete before they were injured, right? And so, I mean, how can you possibly know what you're going to connect with at this point in your life, whether you were an athlete before or not? So I think providing as many opportunities as possible. It could be bocce, right? It could be cornhole. It could be ice climbing, right? The gamut goes across everything, and with hooked up with the right folks and the right support system, I mean, everything is possible.
Yeah, even esports can't be underestimated.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
True. I'm curious, as far as like in your personal experience, like working directly with a patient, what does that initial conversation look like as you start to kind of encourage them to head in the direction of sport or recreation?
Some of those early conversations, very personal thing, depending upon what your relationship is with that person. So it depends how either hard you push or how much you try to make them see. But you offer them these opportunities and let them know there are things to do. And, if you push someone hard and they're not ready to be pushed, that's not good therapy. It's not good doctoring. It's not. So it's really reading that relationship. But I think, at least for anyone, letting them know what's out there. And now with our media, we're able to show pictures. This was us last year doing this. Look kind of fun. Oh, here's Mr. Miss W doing this. Uh, doesn't that look fun? Oh, kayak, sailboat, cycling. Um, Looks like something you did. Oh, I can't do that. And then, as we were mentioning earlier, well, there are those barriers. How could we mitigate those barriers? And there quite possibly is a way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think two things that Jonathan touched on were, it's, if we go, he said, look what we did last year, right? And when I think of that, it's you got to go out there and you got to do it. Like, so as as a provider, I got to go out there and do it. If I don't know what the experience is, how am I possibly going to communicate that? And I mean, the other thing Jonathan said, he's kind of talking about the early relationships with your patients. I mean, I think when you're working with the limb loss population, there's a lot of visits, right? And it's kind of that intimate relationship between the providers and your patients, and so you spend a lot of time together, and so there are opportunities to have these conversations. And if you build trust with your patients, I mean, like, how many times we've been like, we got a surf clinic on the Jersey Shore, and they're like, man, I'm not getting eaten by a shark. It's like, but they'll come because you have that level of trust, right? And so they'll come down to try it out. Half of them are going to be like, this was awesome, I can't wait to get back out here next week. Maybe not half for surfing, and then the rest will be like, I'm glad you made me do that, I'm never doing that again. And but I think it's the opportunity. Well, one of the great things about adaptive sports is, like, whenever you have the opportunity to make somebody who's not always moving that fast move really fast, the results are stellar.
Yeah. I think one other common theme I'm hearing from you all, and this has been kind of similar to my personal experience, is like not being afraid to, like, yourself as a clinician, like getting out there and participating and being there for what I would describe as like your community of patients, community of folks that you're working with throughout that.
Well, to that end, I'm sorry, Will, but yeah, sometimes you go beyond what you're comfortable with. Like, I promote people to get involved in equestrian activities. Now, don't tell anyone else on this podcast, but I'm kind of afraid of horses. Just can't trust them. But I still will get out there and make sure the veterans I serve have access to that, even though they might not know that I'm terrified. The horses always know and they laugh at me, but it's okay.
uh for let's say if you're clinicians who are kind of like getting into this realm, let's say this is kind of a new concept to them, or maybe earlier on in career and kind of starting to dive into this area. um are you aware of any kind of like training programs or kind of resources or organizations that are really supportive of clinicians, we'll say physical therapists, uh that want to kind of get more involved?
Yeah, I mean, we're lucky. We're lucky. Well, it's different today than it was when even when I was coming out of school. Definitely when Jonathan graduated, but when I came out of school, I mean, we have, so obviously within our healthcare system, we have monthly webinars on this, but also the American Physical Therapy Association, the Adaptive Sports Special Interest Group. I mean, a great community. They're always at this combined sections meeting. I mean, so very frequently a whole tract of learning based on that. The federal section, amputation special interest group sponsors lectures and educational sessions at APTA on this as well. There's always one or two there. So it's out there. RESNA, you look for these other organizations. That one, I mean, it probably means something. I think it's the rehab engineering. It's a rehab engineering group, and so RESNA, they have webinars that are also free of charge as well. And so, I mean, there's that. The best thing to do is to go find something in your community and just go volunteer at it. That's getting your hands on and getting your hands dirty, literally. Come back with some wrench grease on your pants. I mean, that is where you're going to learn the most.
Yeah, and honestly, it's so we have where I happen to work. We happen to have an event every year. We call it walk, run, roll. So it's like we have the opportunity to kind of allow them to get onto some of the hand cycles, to potentially do a little bit of running. But getting out walking is just kind of this overall community event. And I'll tell you, just getting like some clinicians out there who haven't had that experience, I can say firsthand, is just an amazing learning opportunity for them. Honestly, for me, every time that I do it. And I don't know if you guys feel like this. I usually I get so excited seeing people like diving into something for the first time, and like my face starts hurting because I'm smiling so much all day. Um, so for sure.
That's a real phenomenon.
Yeah,
It's everybody who's there.
true. Right about here, like on these, just a little soreness there. Are there any kind of like key national sports groups or that kind of like host local events that you would recommend people to check out?
Yeah, I mean, I would start by Googling it, right? I mean, you can ask your chat bot if that's how you get down as well. They're out there. There's more and more. I mean, the VA gives grants to 90 different groups across the country,
Wow.
right? And so they're out there, and there's many groups that don't get federal funding that are doing it through their own mechanisms. But yeah, I mean, there's you look at a group like Move United, and they have 200 plus chapters, I think, across the country. And so, I mean, that's the group you'll see on Super Bowl ads with the wheelchair football, right? That just popped up this last year, probably one of the faster growing sports. Um, and so, yeah, they're out there. They're in your community. They're at least in the city that's near your community, but they might be right in your backyard and you don't even know it. And so, I mean, check your YMCA's, see if there's recreation therapy programs at your local hospitals, your local rehab hospitals. There's a lot more out there than you would think. And you'll see spinoffs. I mean, Row, New York, out by Jonathan. They do kids programs. There's a sailing group that Jonathan works with, Hudson River Community Sailing. They work with kids programs, and then they're like, oh, they're like, we have this group of adults that would love to use learn adaptive sailing, learn adaptive rowing, and you can start it as well if it doesn't even exist. If you can just find those folks in the community, you'll be surprised at how passionate everybody is about the sport that they're passionate about, and then bringing more people into that sport. And so, yeah, we can be facilitators of that as well.
Yeah, a big one this past year with Road New York, Leaf, was dragon boat racing.
There you go.
Which is, I guess, it's kind of crazy,
Yeah, I don't want to get the rowers mad at me, but that's like a better version of rowing, right? Like it's a team effort, and I mean, you're
that could
all
be fighting
together.
Yeah. Agreed. They're making paper mache dragons as we speak because those rowboats just don't cut it anymore.
Don't read the comments, Will.
No, all meant in good faith. To that point, one of the things we found as well, like one of the programs we have locally here in New York, was from a gym owner that reached out, who said he's a successful gym owner. It's actually Gleason's gym in Brooklyn, New York, Gleason's famous boxing gym, and he's a veteran himself, and he's getting on in years and says, I've always wanted to give back to veterans. How can I do so? And just the people's goodwill and good wishes out there, seeing a successful local business in your community, you may find that person has a real need and a want to give to veterans or other people living with disabilities, and would love to share their space with those people as well.
Yeah, I mean, you find that's a great example, and I mean, I really found in my experience, veterans so many times lead the way, and veterans are always the first to help another veteran, and so that's an example there. I mean, but similarly in the community as well as, I mean, somebody knows, has a friend or a family member that's living with limb loss, or maybe has cognitive disabilities, or is living with a spinal cord injury. And so, I mean, if you go tell them what you want to do, that that compassion point that you're might already be innate in them, and you don't even have to work that hard. You just have to collaborate. And I mean, that's what's so fun about it is working together, and working in a team.
Yeah, I happen to have an experience with this about 2 years ago, where we had a patient who was connected with like a local dealership in our area, and they came out in like a wild amount of support for some programs that this person was participating in. And it was just something we would have never have thought to ask about, or to reach out to. Literally a series of car dealerships in the region that just got totally behind them, and ended up being probably one of the biggest supporters out in the community for that time. Yeah, amazing to see how a community can come together. Kind of my final question that I like to kind of throw in the podcast here is kind of just a story of, if there's like a patient that kind of sticks in your mind. Jonathan, I know you shared one earlier already, but if there's if each of you have like another patient that kind of really sticks in your mind from your years of experience, and they're kind of what happened there.
Your choice to lead off or back cleanup.
Go ahead. I'll bring us home.
All right, I'll think of one. Yeah, I did have a good one earlier, so I'll make this one kind of quick. But actually, a veteran who living with upper extremity limb loss, who Leif and I know well. He was always interested in golf. He lost his limb 45 plus years ago. Mostly doesn't wear a prosthesis, though Leif and a team which was working with him did design a very special prosthesis for him for a special event. And he does it. Now he's an occasional upper limb prosthetic user, but for golf he doesn't use one. So we've worked with him over the years. He's come to all of our events. He will cycle. We do get him the lower limb powered cycles for the cycling events, and he does different kind of activities for kayaking, but golf is his love. So I actually like to golf as well. Doesn't mean I'm great at it, but I'm also not the worst at it. So we've worked together. He comes into the clinic, and we've done golf analysis in our in our motion capture lab, and giving him some tips along the way. Well, this past spring, actually this last April, he says, it's about time we get out there and play around the golf. And I said, okay, let's do this. I took a day off. I took a day off of work. Met him at a full length golf course in Queens, New York, and I proceeded to have one of the best rounds I've had in quite some time. I didn't play that poorly. I played pretty well. I shot well under 100. Well, this guy shoots an 84, hitting from the white tees, which is the full length tees. And he's not a kid at this point. So it was also people are just ooh everyone's amazed, and he's kind of like, all right, good, you're amazed. He's a good golfer. He just happens to play with one arm, and it was really something to behold. And there were little tweaks which Leif and I did work out some years ago for his golf swing. Not custom molded, but molded golf grips to give him consistency of where the club head will be. Little tweaks. Not tweaks enough to beat me by 10 strokes on a full-length golf course. So that was a very cool experience which happened during this past year cycle.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, I mean when you think of people that like in return like inspire you and just make every the littlest things we do, like the way Jonathan's framing it is, I mean so often when these people reach these heights, you're part of it was just very, very little, or that's how it feels to us. They'll often express otherwise, but I mean we know that it's them that's driving. I mean, we had a guy that came to us, and he was driving back and forth to Walter Reed to New York to get his prosthetics done, and he met one of our prosthetists, and they built a rapport. And then he was like, yeah, I hand cycle, and so this is our guy Fast Freddy, and so we're like, all right, like let me see your bike. And so I'm like, let me try and get you, let's see, and we get him from a recumbent bike to a kneeling bike, so he's got transfemoral limb loss, so he's able to now pump this bike with both arms with his trunk, and he's getting faster and he's getting faster. And he keeps sending us videos and pictures. He's at these national cycling events all of a sudden, where he's doing like the community like marathons, like legit distances, but now he's like racing international races. And he's like, he'd come back and the wheel would break. He's like, the airline broke my bike. He's like, help me, guys. And so we're getting him going. We're like, all right, we got to get him back out there. And then he comes back from the next race. He's like, I got 4th place. I just missed the podium. I'm the only one on this heavy bike. We're like, all right, man. Well, what do we go tell now? Educate us. Like, what's out there? Like, what's the newest technology? And I mean, he's bringing this wealth of knowledge back to us. And I mean, it was great. In Tokyo, he won a bronze medal. And he's like a multi-time like U.S. champion in hand cycling and in the H5 classification. So in these sports, you race against people of similar disabilities. And I mean, this guy, when we met him, he would go home and he would be in his basement, and this is what he tells us. He's like, I never left my basement, and he connected with cycling, and that's what he does. And now it's the same thing. You call him, he's talking while this guy's talking while cycling. So he's like, I'm a trail, and he's cycling with a bunch of dudes on upright bikes that ride elite distances, and he's cranking on his hand cycle with them. They're having trouble keeping up. He's talking on the phone. He's not even out of breath. And I mean, so those experiences are what make it all, I think, worth it. It's so great. And so now I'm a fan of his, and now follow his career as he continues to this day to achieve things that I never could.
I keep hearing these themes of like partnership, exploration, kind of just discovery in general, and community, all these kinds of things that kind of bring this all home. So
yeah, I mean, when you think of partnership, one more thing, Will, that I just thought of is this probably like 10 years ago. I was down in Orlando working the Invictus game. So this is like, at the time there were 16 countries, right? And this is the kind of the brainchild of Prince Harry. And so he started this, and so I'm working down there, and Now, this is also just a fun fact, is this is where he met Meghan Markle, was at the Invictus Games in Orlando. And so I'm not claiming that he got married because of adaptive sports, but it's very likely, I mean, it's surely that's why he wanted to live in the United States.
I was wondering if there was going to be a Prince Harry reference in this. For background, that was part of his originally, for those listening, that was part of his originally included bio, was the fact that
I couldn't get Will to read it. I mean, but so at this event we get there, and what we found there was that the U.S. team was really well resourced, and so most of my time was with the ally countries. And so, we have athletes from Jordan who are in a wheelchair racer, so that long wheelchair that you push, and doing the track events, and they've never done this before, and so they're out there on the track pushing these chairs, and now their hands are bleeding. So these people with spinal cord injury, their hands are bleeding, and so like part of the job, and this is, I mean, the good thing to set expectations for kind of new clinicians out there that getting out in the field is, I mean, my job for that was the other athletes there help them learn the technique of pushing this racer. My job was to get in a rental car, go to Home Depot, buy some gloves so that she could wear these to race in. And because her hands were literally bleeding, and that event turned out to be a great event. And did I do textbook adaptive sports or physical therapy? No, but I mean, this is what happens when you get out there. You got to be ready to do any job and whatever it takes.
Yeah, like you said, partnership right there. Awesome. Well, Leif, Jonathan, thank you so much for joining in.
Pleasure.
Well, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, Will. And adaptive sports are good medicine.
Thanks.